Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is the post-match roundup show after Liverpool beat Cardiff by 4-1 today in what was really just a very, very lovely day to be at Anfield and to watch Liverpool pick up 3 points and shoot to the top of the Premier League table. I'm going to be coming on to a few of your comments about the game, some of your man of the match shouts and player ratings and so on a bit later on in the show, but starting off with my own player ratings and starting off with the goalkeeper, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 because, you know, he didn't really have that much to do at the end of the day, and I don't think the goal was necessarily his fault. I mean, from where I was watching, it did look a little bit silly. It looks like, you know, he just essentially lets it go past him, but there were a few deflections along the way, and it wasn't really his fault that those happened. So I think apart from that, he doesn't really have anything to do. He does some funny stretches, I guess. He looks a bit strange doing them, but, you know, he keeps himself in shape, so he gets a 7 out of 10 for that. Moving on to Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back, I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10 because I thought we just didn't quite see enough from Trent today. I think he had a pretty good performance against Red Star Belgrade and another reasonably solid one today, but just not quite hitting the heights that we saw from him last season. And in these kind of games, you do want Trent to be sort of piling himself forward and whipping crosses in and contributing something a little bit more to the attack. So, you know, he's not quite hit the form that we saw last season, but still reasonably solid. So he gets a 6 out of 10. Virgil van Dijk gets a 7 out of 10. Reasonably imperious for most of the game. He comes out of defence a few times to play the ball around and dribble it around a little bit. I think some of that is trying to help out the team. Some of that might be down to boredom as well. But all things considered, a reasonable performance apart from a few moments here or there where he looked a bit shaky. A similar story with Dejan Lovren, who I thought didn't really put a foot wrong throughout the game, apart from maybe a couple of moments where he misplaces a pass or he lets a runner get away from him and stuff like that. But again, another 7 out of 10 performance where they're not amazing, they're not awful, they're just absolutely fine. And when you're playing a team like Cardiff, a team that we are obviously so much better than in terms of raw quality of the players, that is not a problem at all that we are playing at a 7 out of 10 level. Another 7 out of 10 goes to Alberto Moreno, who I think was certainly a player that people are a little bit worried about going into this game. It's the one name that appeared on the team sheet and the one name that came out of the rotation policy that I think everyone did wince at ever so slightly because you just never quite know with Albi Moreno. But I thought today he filled in for Robertson really well. It feels like he's been watching his Andrew Robertson DVDs this week because everything that Moreno hasn't done in the past that we praise Robertson for, like his defensive solidity, his focus and his ability to read the game, Moreno actually did that reasonably well today. And I think there weren't really any moments where I thought he stepped out of line and made any mistakes that cost Liverpool. So I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10 for that. Another 7 out of 10, pretty much every player's getting one today, goes to Fabinho in that defensive midfield too. I thought he was just really fine today. You know, it wasn't like the Red Star game where he maybe got a few more opportunities to show what he was about. I think the Arsenal game in a week's time, if he starts, is where we'll get a real measure of just how good Fabinho is and just how far along he's come along in his development at Liverpool so far. Whereas today, as a defensive midfielder and a tough tackling defensive midfielder, you're never going to get too many opportunities to shine against Cardiff. But he still did pretty much everything spot on, apart from the odd misplaced pass here and there. So a 7 out of 10 for him. Gini Wijnaldum gets an 8. I think he was one of Liverpool's best players today. He just looks so fantastic, doesn't he? The way he carries the ball, the way he links up with Fabinho and the players ahead of him as well, the way he can drop back into the defence and cover for players there. He drives forward with the ball, he passes it, he gives and goes. He just does everything you could possibly want from a midfielder, and he does it with such ease and such slickness, and he just keeps up the pace of the team so incredibly well. So Gini Wijnaldum, 8 out of 10. Another fantastic performance from him. Adam Lallana, this was an interesting one. I think he was the one player, apart from Moreno, who came into the side, and I don't think any of us were really that sure about him. He didn't really shine in the game against Huddersfield last week, and today I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10 because I just thought he looked so far off the pace, and considering he was playing a kind of similar role to the one that Shaqiri played in the 4-2-3-1, one of the biggest compliments that I could have paid to Shaqiri for that performance against Red Star was the fact that he didn't look out of place at all. He looked like he was on a similar level to the players around him, and when you're playing alongside players like Salah, Firmino and Mane, that is obviously a very, very high compliment to give. And I think Adam Lallana clearly looked like the odd one out here. He clearly looked like the player who'd been sort of drafted in to replace replace someone and let them get rested. And it just really showed today, you know, he wasn't really didn't seem that confident on the ball. He wasn't really driving forward with it. I think in terms of his dribbling, he never seems to have that many ideas. He's still got a decent pass on him. There are a couple of times where he plays some long balls and they look impressive and they look flash, but they're never really achieving that much. And I thought in general, he seemed to slow Liverpool down today more than he actually helped them out. And to be honest, it does just feel like the team has moved on without him while he's been injured, which is a shame. But at the end of the day, a sign of just how far Liverpool have come. So yeah, 5 out of 10 for Adam Lallana, unfortunately. Roberto Firmino, I'm going to give a 7 out of 10. I didn't think this was really his best game by any stretch of the imagination. He looked a little bit out of place in that number 10 role, which is a shame and a little bit weird because he looked so good in it against Red Star. He seemed to really flourish, playing just off of Mo Salah and drifting out wide and sort of popping up in all sorts of areas. Whereas today, he just looked like he didn't quite know what he was supposed to be doing. There were times where we were driving forward, getting ready to get the ball into the box, and he was messing around on a centre circle, and you're thinking, I know you're not playing as the number 9, but you are still expected to be in the box and be helping out and helping Liverpool finish chances. So I think it wasn't his best game today, but he did still show flashes of his quality, and he does that sort of back heel nutmeg thing where he's under pressure, he's on the floor, and sets Liverpool on the counter with that. So he gets an extra point for that, and he gets a 7 out of 10. Sadio Mane gets an 8 out of 10. I thought today was a bit of a sporadic performance from him. At half-time, I was even texting my dad, calling for him to be hooked, because I thought, you know, he wasn't really at the top of his game, and I thought maybe Shaqiri would have been a better fit for the game, but he certainly proved me wrong in that second half. He was just, when he needed to be at the top of his game, he absolutely was. When he was bearing down on goal and you're thinking, please God, just finish this off, Sadio, you see the absolute best side of him in those moments. So someone who scores 2 fantastic goals like that, I don't think you can really give anything less than an 8 out of 10. And then Mo Salah, my man of the match today, I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10 because I just thought throughout the game he was so influential, whether it was scoring that goal early on that sets us on our way to the 3 points and calms what could have been a lot of nerves if Cardiff had held out for a little bit longer. I think it's so important that we scored inside those first 10 minutes. And I thought it was a pretty good goal as well it was a real goal line scramble and everyone was struggling to get the ball where they wanted it to go. And Mo Salah just pops up with so much coolness and just tucks it away with the finish of a calm, composed, assured finisher. And that is what Mo Salah is like at his best. And it's really nice to see that he might actually be getting back to that. And then he obviously gets 2 assists as well. I thought he was a menace to Cardiff throughout the game. Something that I've really been impressed with Salah over the last few games is his play on the ball, not just in terms of goal scoring, not just in terms of passing, but when he gets into the box, he's holding onto the ball, he's taking players on, he's doing what he was doing at his absolute best last season when he was so confident and he really believed he was one of the best footballers in the world. And if he is to get back to that, then he's going to have to keep playing like this. So I thought Mo Salah was ace today, looks like he's getting back to his best, so he gets a 9 out of 10. Onto the subs, Xherdan Shaqiri I think gets an 8 out of 10. You know, wasn't necessarily on quite long enough to actually warrant a 9 out of 10, but I thought what he did when he was on the pitch was absolutely fantastic, and that goal was sublime. I mean, the way he takes the ball, the confidence with which he just dribbles through all those players. You know, there are about 5 different times where he's in the box and you're just screaming, shoot Xherdan, just get the shot away, but he waits and he waits and he waits and he keeps moving the ball until he gets into the prime position to beat the goalkeeper. And that is the sign of a player not just really of really good quality, but someone who's really, really confident as well, and someone who genuinely believes he should be a member of Liverpool's first 11. And the way he's going, I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if we end up at that. And it was interesting to see how Jurgen Klopp spoke about Shaqiri in his press conference. He basically said we were actually annoyed that we had to rest him, and he justified it. And I think it entirely makes sense that we rested him because he played both games in the international break. He starts against Huddersfield and against Red Star Belgrade, and given that he didn't necessarily play that much football earlier on in the season before that, it makes sense that you want to rest him for this game. But the way Klopp spoke about him and the way he said we didn't really want to rest him, it sounds like he's talking about Shaqiri not just a first team player, but as a first 11 player now, and one of those first names on the team sheet in that attacking line, which is a really, really impressive sign of how far he has come, and in no way an exaggeration of just how much Shaqiri is offering to Liverpool's first team at the moment. So an 8 out of 10 for him. And then James Milner gets a 6 out of 10. You know, he came on, did a little bit of bits, you know, had a few shots on goal and was involved in attacks. Didn't really do any magic, but, you know, did what you want from a midfielder when they come on that late on in the game. So moving on to a few of your comments then. Jack has left his player ratings on. I think it's interesting he has given Trent Alexander-Arnold an 8 out of 10. Maybe he has seen something I haven't. You know, when you're in the ground, you do kind of, your perception of how players play is very much down to sort of individual moments that you spot throughout the game. So there could have been times when he put in really good deliveries and stuff like that I just missed out on or forgot about that. But I think there is still a little bit more to come from Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's given Gini Van Alden a 9 out of 10 and a Fabinho an 8 out of 10 as well. I think both of those, they just form such a good midfield partnership, don't they? They just look like they are natural playing alongside each other. They complement each other so well. They really suit playing in that double pivot with the 4 players ahead of them. And I think that could really be a potent combination for Liverpool going ahead into the latter stages of this season. So I think totally warranted in getting those high ratings there. Lallana gets a 6. Yeah, I think we are going to have to start thinking about where Adam Lallana fits into Liverpool at the moment, because I certainly don't think it is as a first 11 player. I think he's going to start being one of those players like Alberto Moreno has been for about a year now, where they're only really brought in for rotational purposes and for resting people rather than being brought in for a sort of tactical switch or anything like that, which, like I said, is a shame, but that is just where Liverpool are at the moment. He's given Salah a 10 out of 10 and a Man of the Match award. Quite a lot of you have given Salah your Man of the Match. I think that he seems to be the resounding vote from most people, which isn't a surprise. You know, 1 goal, 2 assists. It's the kind of match running performance that you want from your star player. And I think it's really interesting to see that these performances have come from Salah when he's playing in that central striker role. And I think it might be interesting to see whether Jurgen Klopp persists with that, because obviously Firmino, I think his best role is still as the number 9. So I'm not quite sure how we accommodate that. But if Salah is going to carry on scoring as many goals as he is at the moment, then you can't really take him out of there. He's also given Mane a 10 out of 10 and still given Firmino an 8 out of 10. I can't tell how many of those points he's simply given because of that back heel nutmeg thing that he did. But I thought in general, you know, not the most amazing performance. He didn't run the game or anything like that, but he still did show flashes of just how good a footballer he is. Liverpool versus everybody says, this top of the league stuff is such cringe. Sure, it's perfectly fine to be excited about our squad, but my goodness, let the Spurs game pass before we start yelling about top of the league. Also, how on earth was that winning ugly, in reference to my video outside the ground? In terms of winning ugly, I think you've got to think about the fact that until those late goals, which did sort of come because I think Cardiff were absolutely goose, and also because Shaqiri came on and just played really, really well for the last half an hour or so. Before that, it was 2-1, and there were a hell of a lot of nervy moments in the game, and there was about an hour's stretch of game where we were only 1-0 up as well, and it never really felt like we had took the game by the scruff of the neck, and it always felt like maybe if Cardiff sort of got their act together, as good as our game management was for most of it, they could have probably tried to get back into it. And I do feel there were also spells where we just weren't quite clicking going forward, especially for the majority of that first half. It felt like the final ball was never quite there. So not winning ugly in the sense of like scrapping a 1-0 win where you don't deserve it necessarily. It wasn't like a Mourinho style winning ugly, but I just think there is certainly better performances in this Liverpool side. You only have to look as far back as the Red Star Belgrade game to know just how well we can play when we are absolutely on it. And the whole top of the league stuff, you know, I think we're just enjoying ourselves, aren't we? You know, no one is completely serious about the title race yet. There is such a long time to go. But the thing is, with Man City being as good as they are, you've got to take every small victory you've got. And I think the fact that also George Sefton, the voice of Anfield, did say top of the league as his sign-off line as everyone was crowding out of Anfield, just really lifted the mood for everybody and kind of put the idea in everyone's head that we are going to win the league. Because, you know, we haven't won the league for so long. You've just got to enjoy being top of the league whenever it comes around. So yeah, and hopefully City do slip up against Spurs and we end up being top of the league for the rest of the week. Nathan Brooks says, I'm sorry, but Lallana and Moreno need binning. Fekir in January and Chilwell in the summer. I think Lallana is an interesting one because I think he is useful as a squad player. I think it partially comes down to Lallana's personal preference because at his age, he'll probably want to be playing regular first team football and he's just not going to get that at Liverpool. So it's possible that he might actually want to maybe move to a mid-table club or wherever he can go to get some football or stuff like that. But I think he is still a valuable squad player for Liverpool, especially if we end up going the distance in the FA Cup or the Champions League or something like that. We are going to still need him available and on the books. Moreno, I think we should keep because, to be honest, I don't think he had a bad game today, really. There were still a few comments of people saying that it was his fault for the goal and everything and that we should bin him off as soon as possible, but I didn't necessarily think he was that bad, and I think he still would be a useful player for Liverpool to keep, especially until the end of the season. I think we'd be a little bit mad to let him go in January, even if it does mean we get a little bit more money than letting him go for free in the summer. The thing with Fekir, to be honest, given how well Shaqiri's playing at the moment, and listen, it could just be a patch of form and a lot could change between now and the January transfer window, I think Shaqiri is becoming the player that Jurgen Klopp wanted Fekir to be. And to be honest, if he carries on playing like this, then I don't really see the need to splash the money on Fekir, especially when there are those problems with the medical and the knee injury. You know, what if we buy him and he gets injured straight away and never plays and we just end up using Shaqiri anyway? We look a little bit silly, and I know money shouldn't be the object necessarily when you are looking for the league, but why bring a player in and disrupt what you've got when what you've got at the moment is so incredibly good? And LJW finally says, after scoring, Cardiff thought they could get a point. Nope, Cardiff got destroyed at the end. This 2018-19 Liverpool. And yeah, I think that's one of the most important takeaways to bring from this game, is the fact that when it did go to 2-1, lesser Liverpool sides of the past would have absolutely crumbled there. We've seen it happen. I think the game that comes to mind instantly is the one against Cardiff a few seasons ago, where we were 2-0 up, we were cruising, we looked like we were headed for the 3 points, 100%, everything was absolutely fine, and then Sunderland got one goal, we fell to bits, and it ended up being 2-2. So I think that was such a positive sign today of where this Liverpool side has come, that something like that can happen. And at the end of the day, through almost no fault of any player on our side, you know, it's not their fault that goal happens. It is just some dodgy deflections, and that happens at times. You know, even this Liverpool side with their brilliant defence that has, let's remember, only conceded 4 Premier League goals in 10 games, which translates to something like 15 or 16 goals over the season, which might even be a record-breaking tally for least goals conceded by any team. You know, even a defence this good is going to concede goals at times, and the most positive thing that we can take out of it is the fact that Liverpool just looked at the situation there and said, okay, we'll just turn it up a little bit, we'll have 10 minutes where we absolutely blitz them, and then we will be home and hosed and slightly massage our goal difference as well. So all things considered, a great day at the races to be a Liverpool fan. We are top of the league, maybe just for a couple of days, but relish it while it's going on. Thank you guys very, very much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that like button down there, hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been